$150,000 can buy you a beachfront deed in Florida right now. No timeshare, no down payment, just the entire fragile title. For most, it's not a dream, it's a financial sinkhole. The industry sells sunsets and low closing costs. They hide the structural nightmare. 19-foot elevation mandates, uninsurable flood zones, and predatory HOA fees that silently double your mortgage. You're not just buying a house. You're betting your life savings against rising tides that swallow entire neighborhoods every decade. Behind the cheap price tag lurks a six-figure insurance abyss and decaying infrastructure no listing will mention. This isn't property ownership. It's a high-stakes survival game where the bank always floats while you drown in hidden liabilities. Uncovering this takes consultants years and costs thousands. One wrong move here could erase 10 years of retirement. Subscribe now. If you're walking into a fire, you deserve a map of every exit. Let's expose the hidden math. Number 1. Horseshoe Beach. You can buy a piece of Florida paradise for under $150,000 here and still have enough left over for a very expensive boat you're going to need. Yes, really. No, it's not a scam. It's just a gamble. Horseshoe Beach, Florida. Population just under 200, depending on who's currently waiting for insurance adjusters. It's tucked away in the Big Bend, miles from the neon signs of Miami and light years away from your average retirement village. On the surface, it's a salt-sprayed, quiet fishing hamlet, the kind of place where time literally moves slower. And the biggest stressor is whether the redfish are biting. It's authentic, it's serene, and it is wildly isolated. Let's break it down. Median home prices hover around $135,000. That's less than a decent down payment in most major metros. Cost of living is roughly 8% below the national average, and rent sits at a modest $1,100. Sounds like a dream, right? But here's the kicker. That price tag is essentially a cover charge for nature's most aggressive extreme sports. But here's what nobody tells you. First, the 19-foot elevation mandates mean your cheap lot is a financial black hole if you want to actually build a house that won't wash away. Second, insurance? Forget it. Getting coverage here is like trying to convince a bank to lend money to a professional gambler on a losing streak. As one Redditor put it, living in Horseshoe Beach is like playing real-life SimCity on the hardest difficulty. You get the best view in the state, provided you're okay with rebuilding your patio every 2 hurricane seasons. So what's the real trade-off? You'll save a fortune on a mortgage, but you might spend your entire soul worrying about storm surges. It's not a town for the faint of heart. It's a town for people who view a Category 3 as a minor inconvenience. And don't even get me started on the bugs. I swear, the mosquitoes here are the size of small drones. I once saw a dragonfly carry off a tourist flip-flop, and I'm pretty sure the local gnats have a flight plan. You aren't just living with nature. You are actively being colonized by it. Imagine this. You step out onto your porch at midnight. The air is heavy, humid, and smells faintly of salt and low tide. The silence is absolute, broken only by the rhythmic lapping of the Gulf against the pilings and the distant hum of a generator. You look out at the dark, vast water, feeling like the king of the world, until a mosquito the size of a sparrow lands on your neck to remind you who really owns this zip code. If you thought Horseshoe Beach's struggle with Mother Nature was intense, wait till you see the next town, where the drama isn't the weather, it's the locals. Number 2, Fort Pierce. This town is the kind of place where a $150,000 bungalow and a revitalized waterfront exist on the same block as a reality check you weren't prepared for. Fort Pierce, Florida. Tucked away on the Treasure Coast with a population pushing 48,000, it sits as one of the oldest communities on the East Coast. It's not quite a sleepy fishing village, but it's certainly not Miami. It's got a gritty, we've seen it all charm, characterized by its historic downtown and a harbor that's been trying to become the next big thing since the late 80s. First impressions suggest a hidden gem, but the reality is a bit more complicated. Let's break it down. Median home prices sit right around $148,000. To put that in perspective, that's what you'd pay for a parking spot in downtown San Francisco. Cost of living is about 2% below the national average, and rent typically hovers around $1,250. Sounds like a steal, right? But here's the thing. You aren't just buying a house. You're buying into a neighborhood that's been on the verge of a total transformation for 30 years. But here's what nobody tells you. First, the poverty rate here is double the national average, which creates some pretty wild disparities. Second, the revitalization is hyper-localized. Cross the wrong street, and the vibe shifts from quaint bistro to I should probably lock my doors. Finally, you're on the Atlantic side, which means those insurance premiums are going to make your mortgage payment look like a rounding error. As one local posted on a forum, Fort Pierce is the most honest town in Florida. It doesn't try to be Naples, and it doesn't try to hide its scars. If you want a picket fence and a gated community, keep driving south. So what's the real trade-off? You get actual historic character and proximity to the ocean for a fraction of the price, but you have to be comfortable living in an area that's still very much a work in progress. You'll save money on the house, sure, but you might spend a lot of time wondering if the gentrification wave is ever actually going to crest. And don't even get me started on the roads. I swear, the potholes in Fort Pierce have their own area codes. I've seen craters on the main drag deep enough to hide a small sedan. It's like the city planners decided that speed bumps were too mainstream, so they just let the pavement surrender to gravity instead. It's a great way to ensure you never go above 15 miles per hour, unless, of course, you want to replace your suspension every 3 months. Picture this. It's a Tuesday morning. The air is thick with the smell of roasting coffee and damp sea air. You're walking down the newly renovated waterfront, enjoying the sunrise, thinking you finally cracked the code to affordable coastal living. Then you turn a corner, see a boarded-up storefront next to a gleaming new condo, and realize that you're living in a town that's effectively split between 2 different decades. At least Fort Pierce doesn't have to rebuild every 2 years, probably we saw in Horseshoe Beach. It's a bit more stable, but that comes with its own set of urban headaches. And if you think Fort Pierce's identity crisis is interesting, wait till you see the next town. It's where the definition of waterfront starts to get really, really creative. Subscribe, because this is the exact kind of data local real estate agents hope you never find. Knowledge is the only leverage you have in this market. Number 3, Port Richey. You can live 10 minutes from the Gulf of Mexico for $142,000, which is basically the hack for people who want a boat but don't want to pay the island living tax. No, it's not a beachfront mansion, but it's real, it's wet, and it's surprisingly within reach. Port Richey, Florida. Population around 3,000, nestled right along the Gulf Coast, just north of Tampa. It's the kind of place that's less swanky yacht club and more fishing tackle in the back of the truck. On the surface, it's a blue-collar paradise, low-key, unpretentious, and aggressively casual. It's not trying to win any beauty pageants, and honestly, that's exactly why people move here. Let's break it down. Median home price is sitting at about $142,000. Rent averages around $1,300. The cost of living is roughly 5% below the national average. Sounds like a steal, right? But here's the kicker. In Florida, waterfront is a spectrum. Sometimes it means a panoramic view of the sunset. Sometimes it means you're living on a stagnant canal that hasn't seen a decent tide since 2012. But here's what nobody tells you. First, the HOA fees in some of these waterfront communities are absolute highway robbery. They can practically double your monthly costs. Second, the summer traffic on the main artery, US 19, will make you want to drive your car into the ocean on purpose. Finally, if you're looking for that tropical aesthetic, you might be disappointed. Some parts of town feel more like a suburban sprawl that just happens to be near a swamp. As one Redditor put, Port Richey isn't a beach town. It's a town that happens to be near the water. Know the difference before you sign the deed, or you'll be the guy complaining about the lack of sand at the local boat ramp. So what's the real trade-off? You get access to the Gulf and a solid community, but you're sacrificing the resort feel for a more rugged, everyday vibe. You'll save thousands on a home price, but you might spend your weekends sitting in bumper-to-bumper traffic just trying to get a gallon of milk. And don't even get me started on the parking situation. It's non-existent. You could spend 45 minutes circling a public access point, only to have some guy in a rusted-out pickup pull into the last spot while you're mid-turn. It's a contact sport here. I've seen people lose friendships over a sliver of asphalt near a marina. Forget the boat. you'll spend more time fighting for a place to leave your trailer. Imagine this. It's a Saturday afternoon, the sun is blazing, and the air smells like salt, outboard motor exhaust, and fry grouper. You're sitting on your patio, listening to the muffled sound of a distant country song coming from a neighbor's garage, feeling pretty good about your bank account. Then, a truck with a loud muffler rolls by, reminding you that you're living in a town that definitely prioritizes function over luxury, compared to the urban grid of Fort Pierce. At least Port Richey keeps things simple. It's not trying to revive anything. It's just doing its thing. But if you thought Port Richey's canal-side waterfront was a creative interpretation, wait until you see the next town, where the water is arguably the only thing keeping the place from disappearing entirely. Number 4, Crystal River. You can buy a home here for $145,000 and spend your weekends swimming with endangered manatees. It sounds like a Disney movie, but let's be real. Sometimes the nature starts hitting back. Crystal River, Florida. Population around 3,500, located way up on the nature coast. It's essentially a giant spring-fed playground. On the surface, it's all crystal clear turquoise water and peaceful paddling. The kind of place that screams, "I've retired and I'm never wearing a tie again." It's famous for its springs and the massive migration of manatees. But there's a massive gap between the postcard and the property tax bill. Let's break it down. Median home price is right at $145,000. Rent averages about $1,200. The cost of living is roughly 6% below the national average. Translation: your dollar goes a long way here, provided you aren't spending it all on boat maintenance. It's one of the few places left where you can actually get a decent house for a price that doesn't require selling a kidney. But here's what nobody tells you. First, the town is basically a tourist magnet in the winter. Your quiet street will be invaded by folks in rented kayaks who have zero idea how to operate them. Second, the springs are beautiful, but they're also high maintenance. Flood zones are everywhere. Third, if you aren't into fishing or boating, you're going to run out of things to do by about 3 p.m. on your first Tuesday. As one Redditor put it, Crystal River is paradise for 3 months of the year and a humid, mosquito-infested waiting room for the other 9. Just make sure you like manatees, because they're basically your new landlords. So what's the real trade-off? You get unparalleled access to some of the cleanest water in the world, but you lose that big city convenience. You'll save on the mortgage, but you might spend every summer afternoon fighting off the humidity and the feeling of isolation. And don't even get me started on the store hours. I swear, everything in this town shuts down before the sun goes down. You'll be craving a late-night snack, pull up to a local market, and find the lights off and a "See you tomorrow" sign on the door. It's like the whole town collectively decides to go to bed at the same time as a toddler. Picture this. It's a humid July morning. The air smells like fresh spring water and pine needles. You're standing on your dock, coffee in hand, watching a manatee lazily drift past your feet. It's breathtaking, it's peaceful, and it feels like you finally made it. Then a group of tourists in bright orange vests paddle by, screaming, "Look, a manatee!" and splashing so much water you have to retreat inside. Compared to Port Richey suburban, highway-adjacent feel, Crystal River is a massive step up in terms of vibes, but it's a lot slower. If you thought the waterfront in Port Richey was questionable, wait until you see the next town. It literally exists in the middle of nowhere, and the locals like it that way. Number 5, St. Mark's. You can grab a slice of old Florida waterfront for around $149,000, but be warned, you're at the very end of the line, and the road literally stops at the Gulf. No, it's not a bustling tourist trap. It's the place you go to disappear. St. Mark's, Florida. Population barely cracking 300, tucked deep in the marshes south of Tallahassee. It's the kind of town you find by accident because your GPS gave up and you just kept driving toward the smell of salt and wood smoke. On the surface, it's a rugged, historic port town known for its lighthouse and the fact that it sits exactly where the river meets the Gulf. It's authentic, it's sleepy, and it's about as far from a master plan community as you can get. Let's break it down. Median home prices hover around $149,000. Rent is rare, but if you find it, you're looking at about $1,150. Cost of living is roughly 9% below the national average. Translation: your wallet will thank you, but your delivery apps won't. There's no big box retail here. There's number 24-hour convenience store. You're trading convenience for a life that feels like it's frozen in 1975. But here's what nobody tells you. First, the isolation is real. If you forget the milk, you're looking at a 30-minute drive to get more. Second, the storm surge risk is high, and the local infrastructure is basically a few roads and a lot of marsh grass. Third, the job market. Unless you're a fisherman, a park ranger, or work remotely, you're going to have a bad time. As one local put it, street marks isn't for people who need things to do. It's for people who need things to stop. If you can handle the quiet, you'll never leave. If you need a mall, you'll be gone in a week. So what's the real trade-off? You get total seclusion and pristine nature, but you lose the social safety net of a bigger city. You'll save on property taxes, sure, but you might spend your evenings realizing that the nearest hospital is a bit of a trek when the wind starts picking up. And don't even get me started on the bugs. I swear, the gnats in St. Mark's have a union. They don't just bite, they organize. You'll be sitting on your porch, minding your own business, and suddenly you're swarmed by a literal cloud of bugs that seem to have calculated the exact aerodynamic path to your eyeballs. It's like living in a nature documentary where you're the main course. Imagine this. It's midnight. You're standing on the dock of the St. Mark's River. The sky is so clear you can see the Milky Way. The air smells like damp marsh and sea salt, and the only sound is the water hitting the pylons. It's deeply, profoundly peaceful. Then, a massive raccoon wanders onto the dock, stares you down for 5 seconds, and knocks over your trash just to prove who really runs the place. Compared to the tourist-heavy bustle of Crystal River, St. Mark's is a ghost town. But if you thought the isolation here was intense, wait until you see the next spot. It's a place that's somehow even more disconnected, and the price tag is just as baffling. Number 6, Palatka. You can snag a historic home on the St. Johns River for $138,000, and for a second, you'll feel like you bought into an old money Florida dream. Then you'll realize that the resurgence has been taking its sweet time since the mid-90s. Palatka, Florida. Population around 10,000. Situated on the banks of the St. Johns River about an hour south of Jacksonville. On the surface, it's a town with incredible bones, massive oak trees, gorgeous Victorian-era architecture, and a riverfront that looks like a movie set. It was once the playground of northern tourists coming down by steamboat, and you can still see that Gilded Age ambition hanging on by a thread. It's got history, it's got scale, and it's got a lot of unanswered questions. Let's break it down. Median home prices sit right around $138,000. Rent is a manageable $1,150. Cost of living is roughly 10% below the national average. Sounds like a bargain, right? But here's the kicker. Palatka is a classic example of a town where the price reflects the economic reality of a region that's been waiting for its big break for 3 decades. But here's what nobody tells you. First, the property taxes can be deceptive because the infrastructure costs are high. Second, the local economy is still shaking off the loss of major manufacturing, leaving a job market that is, let's be kind, emerging. Finally, for all that beautiful riverfront, you better make sure your specific house isn't sitting on a floodplain that turns your basement into a swimming pool during the rainy season. As one Redditor put it, Palatka is the Florida town that time forgot. It's got more character than any 5 gated communities combined. But don't move here expecting a Starbucks on every corner. So what's the real trade-off? You get to live in a house with actual soul for a price that lets you sleep at night, but you're sacrificing the convenience of modern suburban sprawl. You'll save on the mortgage, but you might spend your time dealing with the fact that the town is still reinventing itself after the industry left town. And don't even get me started on the weather, specifically the river fog. I swear, some mornings you could carve your name into the air. You'll be trying to drive to the grocery store, and you're basically playing a real-life version of Silent Hill. I've seen people lose their own driveways and that stuff. If you're afraid of the dark, just wait until the fog rolls off to St. John's and tells you to stay inside. Picture this. It's a humid Saturday afternoon. You're sitting on a porch swing under a massive, moss-draped oak. The air smells like river water and blooming azaleas. You watch a boat lazily cruise down to St. John's, and for a fleeting moment, everything is perfect. Then, you look at your phone, realize you have 2 bars of service, and remember that you're living in a town that's perfectly content to let the rest of the world move at its own frantic pace. At least Palatka feels like a real town compared to the tiny, isolated port of St. Mark's. It's got a bit more heartbeat, even if the pulse is a little slow. But if you thought the history in Palatka was something, wait until you see the next spot, where the water is actually the main villain. Number 7. Steenhatchee. You can find some of the most beautiful river-to-Gulf access in the state here, and while the cheap dream is getting harder to track down, you can still find hidden pockets where the price tag doesn't make you weep. Just don't expect a Home Depot nearby. You're buying into a life that's about as off-grid as Florida gets. Steenhatchee, Florida. Population around 500, deep in the heart of the Big Bend. It's the kind of place that's defined by the river that shares its name and a culture that revolves entirely around scalloping and fishing. On the surface, it's a rustic, moss-draped wonderland. It's not flashy, it doesn't have a nightlife, and it definitely doesn't have a mall. It's just you, the water, and a whole lot of peace and quiet. Let's break it down. While the median listing prices for the area have been climbing toward the $350,000 to $400,000 range, you can still find fixer-uppers or smaller lots in the surrounding zip codes closer to that $150,000 goal if you're willing to put in the work. It's a buyer's market in 2026, meaning homes sit on the market for months. Translation: you have leverage, but you have to be ready to walk away if the deal isn't perfect. But here's what nobody tells you. First, affordable often means needs major hurricane proofing. Second, the economy is 100% tied to the season. If the scalloping isn't good, the whole town feels it. Third, you're basically living in a nature preserve, which sounds great until you realize your lawn is actually just a home for every species of snake in the county. As one Redditor put it, Steenhatchee is where you go when you're tired of people. You'll have the best sunset in the state, but you'll also have to drive an hour just to get a decent cup of coffee that didn't come out of a gas station machine. So what's the real trade-off? You get world-class fishing in a community that still knows their neighbors' names, but you lose almost all the modern conveniences you're used to. You'll save on the stress of the city, but you might spend your extra cash on gas because you'll be driving everywhere for everything. And don't even get me started on the bugs. I swear, the mosquitoes in Steenhatchee are large enough to be regulated by the FAA. You step outside for 5 minutes, and you're a human blood buffet. I've seen locals wearing full-body netting just to check the mail. It's not just an annoyance. It's a way of life. Imagine this. It's a humid, still evening. The sky is turning a bruised shade of purple over the river. The air smells like brackish water and pine needles, and it's so quiet you can hear a fish jump 3 docks down. You're sitting on your porch with a cold drink, feeling like you've finally found a corner of the world that hasn't been ruined by developers. Then, a massive mosquito lands on your hand, and the reality of the wild side of Florida kicks in, compared to Palatka's fading gilded age charm. Steenhatchee is a total throwback to a simpler time. It's not trying to be a city. It's just trying to be a boat launch. But if you thought Steenhatchee was isolated, wait until you see the next town. It's where the water is so unpredictable that the whole town basically has a check the tides before you leave policy. Number 8. Belglade. You can land a home here for around $136,000, sitting right on the southeastern shore of the massive Lake Okeechobee. No, it's not the turquoise beach you're picturing, but it is technically waterfront, and the price is one of the lowest in the state. Just be prepared. You aren't moving here for nightlife. You're moving here because you want to be as far from the Miami hype as possible. Belglade, Florida. Population around 17,000, located in the true heart of Florida's agricultural glades. On the surface, it's the gateway to the Everglades. It's defined by the "her soil is her fortune" motto, massive sugarcane fields, and a pace of life that makes the rest of Florida look like it's on caffeine. It's humble, it's tight-knit, and it's a world away from the high-rises and tourist traps of the coast. Let's break it down. Median home value is sitting at a very accessible $136,500. Rent averages around $780. The cost of living is significantly lower than the national average, making it one of the most budget-friendly places in Florida. Sounds like a dream, right? But here's the kicker. This isn't a vacation destination. This is a working agricultural town where the view is sugarcane, not surf, and the economy is tied to the fields. But here's what nobody tells you. First, the isolation is real. If you want to hit the beaches of West Palm, you're looking at a 45-minute drive. Second, job opportunities are heavily skewed toward agriculture. Finally, while it's peaceful, it's definitely not the resort-style living most people dream of when they move to the Sunshine State. As one local put it, Belle Glade is real Florida. You won't find any tourists here, and honestly, that's the best part. It's quiet, it's cheap, and if you can appreciate the beauty of the Glades, it's the best-kept secret in the county. So what's the real trade-off? You get incredible affordability and a genuine community feel, but you lose the coastal glam. You'll save on housing, sure, but you might spend your weekends looking for excitement outside of the city limits. And don't even get me started on the bugs. It's the Everglades, people. I swear, when the sun goes down, the wildlife comes out to play. You'll be sitting on your porch, and it's like a scene from a nature documentary, except the main character is a mosquito that's decided your left arm is an all-you-can-eat buffet. It's not just a nuisance, it's an ecosystem. Imagine this. It's a humid, golden evening. The sun is setting over the flat, expansive horizon of the sugarcane fields. The air smells like rich, fertile soil and distant water, and the quiet is so intense it feels like a heavy blanket. You're sitting there, looking out over the landscape, realizing that you're living in a version of Florida that most people will never see. It's not the beach, but it's real, it's raw, and it's yours. Compared to Steinhatchee's rugged Gulf isolation, Belle Glade feels like a different planet. It's inland, it's agricultural, and it's undeniably grounded. But if you thought Belle Glade's lakefront was unique, wait until you see the next town. It's where the water is truly the star of the show, and the price is somehow even lower. Number 9, Cedar Key. You can find affordable pockets here. But let's be clear, you're paying for a lifestyle that feels like the 1970s never ended. It's one of the last true old Florida island towns, where the pace is glacial and the main industry is still clam farming. Cedar Key, Florida. Population around 2,800. Sitting out on a series of barrier islands in the Gulf. It's not just near the water, you are surrounded by it, on the surface. It's a beautiful, remote, and incredibly charming slice of history. It's got that weathered, salty aesthetic that people spend thousands of dollars to replicate in high-end suburbs. It's quiet, it's safe, and the air is as clean as it gets in the Sunshine State. Let's break it down. While some sources might flash a $180,000 median value, the reality of 2026 is that home values in Cedar Key are shifting, with averages closer to $315,000. You can still find smaller cottages or fixer-uppers for less if you're lucky, but don't expect a turnkey mansion for under $150,000 unless you're buying a boat slip with a shed on it. Translation: the cheap dream is a moving target. But here's what nobody tells you. First, the isolation is intense. You are a solid drive from any real medical facility or major shopping. Second, hurricane risk isn't a maybe here. It's an eventuality that dictates your insurance premiums. Finally, if you need high-speed fiber internet for your remote job, you're going to be frustrated by the reality of island infrastructure. As one Redditor put, Cedar Key is paradise for people who hate traffic and love clams. But if you're the type of person who needs an Amazon delivery in 24 hours, you're going to have a bad time. So what's the real trade-off? You get to live in a postcard-perfect island community, but you sacrifice the creature comforts of the mainland. You'll save on stress, but you might spend your days dealing with the logistical nightmare of living on an island that Mother Nature is constantly trying to reclaim. And don't even get me started on the parking. It's a tiny island. There's basically one main road, and during tourist season, it looks like a parking lot. I've seen people drive in circles for 30 minutes just to grab a cup of coffee. It's a small town problem with a big town ego, and it's enough to make you just park your car and never move it again. Imagine this. It's a late afternoon in the spring. You're sitting on the dock at the end of 2nd Street. The air smells like brine and cedar, and the water is perfectly flat. A local fisherman is pulling in his haul of clams. The sun is dipping into the Gulf, and for a second, you feel like the richest person on earth. Then, you realize you have to go to the mainland for gas, and the island time suddenly feels more like island trap. Compared to Belgrade's agricultural grid, Cedar Key is a total shift in geography and soul. It's wetter, salter, and a whole lot slower. But if you thought Cedar Key's island vibe was something, wait until you see our final stop. It's a place that proves you can still find the Florida dream, if you know exactly where to look. Number 10. Fellsmere. If you're tired of the coastal insurance nightmares we talk about all video, you head inland to Fellsmere. You can find older homes here for around $145,000, and while you aren't waking up to the Atlantic, you're sitting on the edge of the St. Johns River Basin with some of the best freshwater fishing in the entire country. Fellsmere, Florida. Population around 6,000, located just west of Vero Beach. On the surface, it's a town that refuses to grow up. It's got a massive marshland preserve, a legendary annual Frog Leg Festival, and a vibe that's pure small-town Florida. It's not flashy, it's not touristy, and it's one of the few places left where people actually know their neighbors by name. It's the ultimate anti-Miami escape. Let's break it down. Median home prices are holding steady around $145,000. Rent averages $1,100. Cost of living is roughly 7% below the national average. Translation: you're living in a town that still feels like 1990, and your paycheck doesn't feel like it's evaporating the moment you get it. You're trading beach sand for base boats, and for a lot of people, that's a winning trade. But here's what nobody tells you. First, the amenities are limited. If you need a fancy mall, you're driving 20 minutes east. Second, it's surrounded by wetlands, which means that nature is constantly trying to enter your living room. Third, it's small. Everyone knows everyone, and if you're trying to hide from the world, this probably isn't the place. The small-town gossip machine is very much alive and well. As one Redditor put it, Fellsmere isn't for people who want the Florida lifestyle. It's for people who want a porch, a fishing pole, and to never hear a siren again. It's simple, it's honest, and it's home. So what's the real trade-off? You lose the ocean access, but you gain a community that actually feels like community. You'll save money on the house, and you might just spend the rest of your life realizing you didn't need the beach as much as you thought you did. And don't even get me started on the Frog Leg Festival. I swear once a year, this town turns into a giant frying pan-wielding madness. It's like the entire population of the county decides to descend on one park to eat as many frogs as possible. It's absurd, it's delicious, and it's the kind of local quirk you just won't find in a gated community in Boca. Imagine this. It's a quiet Sunday morning. You're sitting on your back deck. The air smells like fresh rain and cypress trees, and there's absolutely zero traffic noise. You watch the sun climb over the marsh, knowing that you managed to find a peaceful, affordable piece of Florida that hasn't been paved over by high-rise condos. You aren't coastal, but you are exactly where you need to be. Compared to crumbling, tide-battered island charm of Cedar Key, Fellsmere feels like solid ground. It's the perfect place to end our list because it proves that if you're willing to trade the beach for the base, you can still find the American dream in the Sunshine State without going broke. Would you trade the ocean for the marsh to save your retirement fund? Comment beach or marsh down below. Let's settle this once and for all. Thanks for watching and stay smart out there.